to know about handbell ringing you can learn from playing bob minor, which is almost 90% true. So this is directly a follow-on from Simon Linford's excellent talk, which we did watch a few weeks ago, which was a very basic introduction to handbell ringing, which ran through a lot of really interesting stuff. And so this talk is going to kind of pick up where Simon left off. And I'm hoping after the pair of talks and any other talks you might get from other people in the St. Martin's Guild who are more experienced than we are by quite a margin, that you'll be encouraged to try handbells or to continue ringing handbells. The only thing that I would disagree with Simon about would be that he said handbell ringing is quite hard. I actually disagree. It's not hard as long as you don't think of it as hard, but it is different from learning to ring in tower. So if you're used to ring in tower bows, handbell ringing will feel different because you're stretching your brain in a different way. So this talk is essentially chapter 5 from our book, in fact, with a bit of chapter 6, if you want some references. Oh, it's not working, Simon. Oh, there you are.
Okay, maybe you just weren't focused in it.
Yeah, possibly. Oh yeah, I wasn't focused in it. Okay, so I'm starting from this slide here. This is more or less where Simon Linford left off. So I just want to review this. This was playing bob minor from the trebles, and I've picked this point in Simon's talk just to do a review of our basic plain hunting patterns that he went through. So we have the first lead of the trebles course in playing bob minor. The treble and the second are in the coursing position, which is where the bell in front rings, lets one bell pass, and the second bell rings. And the coursing position, I want to emphasize all through this talk as a technique, this section of this learning to do this plain hunt and this pattern is your 100% bestest friend ever when you're ringing handbells. Learning this particular pattern thoroughly so that you can just do it automatically will just give you so much more ability to ring much harder things. So this is a really important pattern because it happens in all kinds of places. So from the trebles, we know that every time that the treble leads, there's a seconds place here, which forces the second to dodge. And that forces the trebles as a pair to move to a new plain hunting position. And we know in the second lead from Simon's talk that we have the 2-3 or the parted position or the split pair, all kinds of ways to talk about it. And the key thing is your first bell rings, 3 bells go past, and then your second bell rings. So a lot of times when people are learning these plain hunting patterns, they think of this pattern as the hardest one to learn. Maybe it is, but actually this is your second bestest ever friend as you go on in your handbell ringing career, because especially when you get out of 6-bell ringing, this pattern where you're letting 3 bells go ahead, it has a similar kind of rhythm to ringing with 1 bell in between you. So the coursing pattern is a great pattern to relax in. You ring 1 bell, wait, ring the other, and you can fall into a nice rhythm on that. But also this 2-3 position, again, it has a really nice rhythm if you have to sustain it for a long period of time. This one comes up over and over again. So this is your second bestest friend. So this is one of your bridesmaids there. The third lead, obviously we dodge, the second dodges again, and then we're in this opposites pair where you're coming together, and this is the one lead where you're really hunting for a significant period of time, not in the same direction as both of your bells. The fourth lead, again, we come back into our 2-3 position and we finish coursing, but with the bells reversed around. So far, so familiar. So now we're going to take that into what happens to playing bob if you're not ringing the trebles. So in some ways, a lot of people, almost everybody we've taught has found their first course of playing bob minor ringing from the trebles is the easiest place to start. And the reason for that is that you always know where you're going to dodge because you're ringing the bell that's controlling where the dodges are happening. So you always know when the treble's leading. Whenever the treble's leading, there's going to be a dodge, and there's a seconds place that forces everybody else to dodge. So a lot of people find the trebles easier. because you've only got one bell dodging. You really only have to think about one piece of work because this bell just plain hunts all the time. However, you do have to change hunting position every lead, and that's not always the easiest thing to do. Let's have a look at what plain bob minor looks from the tenors. And here, this is a great pair to learn, even if you like ringing the trebles. So the thing about plain bob from the tenors is that you're coursing almost all the time. You're coursing the entire time, except for one lead in the middle. So it's really, really, really very stable. This is a great opportunity to practice coursing for long periods of time. Let's take a look at this lead by lead. This first lead is plain hunt on 6, which we've already reviewed. These are drawings from our handbell book. So we always have the treble in red. The bell that's in your left hand is the blue line. The bell that's in your right hand is the green line. And if you're struggling while you're ringing to tell your bells apart and you have a habit of swapping them, it's actually not a bad idea to just get a little colored wristband. It doesn't even matter what colors, as long as it's the same colors. Sometimes if you know that left is red and right is black, or left is blue and right is green, that can sometimes help kind of keep you sorted out until you get used to sort of just keeping it sorted out in your head. So here we are plain hunting nicely, nicely. Now when the treble leads, the 5th is dodging 3/4 up. The 6th is dodging 5/6 up, while the 3rd's making seconds there, and the first lead. And so now we come to the first of our sort of more complex shapes other than our plain hunting positions. And this is called a parallel dodge. Both of your bells are dodging in the same direction, but in parallel with each other. So you're literally just continuing your plain hunting, but taking one step back. Both your hand strokes are going to be in the same place, and then you carry on hunting in the same direction that you were hunting in before you're dodging. That's no different from ringing plain bob minor in the tower, but it's always good to remember to keep hunting in the direction that you're going. So now, having done this big parallel dodge, we keep plain hunting, and here we are still coursing. And then we come down, and in this lead, the treble comes down as the 5's finish in its lead, and so the 5 has to make seconds place, and the tenor is dodging 3/4 up. Now, because we have another slightly complex pattern here, so we have one bell making a place and the other bell dodging. And if we've been practicing ringing plain bob minor from the trebles, we're pretty used to doing that because the treble is leading and that's a kind of a place. The treble's ringing first and your other bell's dodging. So that shouldn't feel like too new a movement. So now we have 5/6 landing in seconds and thirds place. And if you've really learnt your plain hunting positions, you know that you're now in the 2/3 position. So this is the scary lead if you're ringing the tenors, but not if you're happy with your 2/3 position. So the bells come together in 2/3, and the 6 carries on hunting up, and the 5th turns around and goes back to lead again, because we know that when you make a place, this kind of place, you have to change direction. The 6 is carrying on in the direction it was going in. And now we ring one lead of this 2/3 hunting position, and you'll notice that here's the treble wandering around in between the two bells. And then it's the turn of the tenor, or the 6th, to make seconds, and the 5th to dodge 3/4 down in this case. So it's the opposite of this dodge in the second lead. You do the opposite, and the effect of that puts you in seconds and fourths place. Seconds and fourths place is coursing. So now we're back into happy coursing position again. So you just have this one lead to worry about when you ring the plain course from the tenors. Then again, we keep coursing, do another nice parallel dodge, and then in our final lead, we course again. And the one thing to be careful of as our last slightly complex movement is dodging with yourself. So you're coming together in rounds just before I've lost my pointer, just before the treble comes in, you come together 5/6 as though you're coming into rounds. You swap your bells over, ringing them 6/5, and then you come back into 5/6. So that's another common mistake. People think they've come into rounds and they stop 2 changes too early. Don't forget to do your dodge with yourself. So when you're doing this coursing pair, I want to emphasize again, you don't really have to think about, you shouldn't be thinking about two lines in this. You should be thinking about whatever the bell in front is doing, and then you let the other bell follow it one bell behind. So you really are just ringing, this is all one line. If you think about it, it's one sort of pattern. The pair acts as a whole pattern together. And the more you think about it that way, the less your brain gets really, really tired while you're counting your way through this with great desperation. So one of the things that's kind of scary about ringing the plain bob away from the trebles is, how do I know when to dodge? And this is no different from ringing it in tower. You just, how do I know when to dodge? So one of the things we use for ringing in the tower is the circle of work. And you'll be amazed to find that in handbells, there is also a circle of work that can be discovered from the tenors pair. And if we start here, that's just the end of the course. If we start here, we see our first parallel dodge, which is 3, 4, and 5, 6 up. And then the fifth makes seconds, and the tenor goes 3, 4 up, which puts you into your 2, 3 position. Do the same in reverse, and it puts you back into coursing. You do a parallel dodge down, and then you dodge with yourself at the back. To be brutally honest, this isn't the best way to learn how to ring plain bob minor in hand. But if it helps you sort of gain some confidence about where you are in the lead, and just remember, you think, oh, I've just done a parallel dodge, that means I'm going to start doing, I'm going to go into my 2, 3 pair. If that helps you get through that plain course, then grab, my advice is to grab any and every technique that you can in order to do just that. It's not entirely helpful to think about handbell ringing or any kind of bell ringing just in the one way. It's much better to grab any technique that works for you, and then to keep adding more and more information to that technique the more you practice. Okay, so I'm just going to back up once. So plain bob minor from the tenors, how does this help you ring just about every other kind of method? Well, these long stretches of coursing appear in just about every method, but there's a special feature of plain bob from the tenors course that's especially helpful. And if we go look at plain bob major from the tenors, if I've got this in the right order, you'll see that in fact, the exact same overall course pattern appears. We course, do a parallel dodge, keep coursing, parallel dodge, keep coursing. Here's our seconds and 3, 4 dodge. Now we're in the 2, 3 position for exactly one lead. And then back we go to coursing with parallel dodge, coursing, parallel dodge, coursing again, dodging with yourself in 7, 8 at the back. If you go look up plain bob royal from the tenors, exactly the same thing happens. You're just counting more places, but you still only have this one lead in the 2, 3 position. That's it. And everything else is coursing, and that's true for plain bob on even numbers all the way up. So as soon as you can ring plain bob minor with a bit more counting, you can ring plain bob major, you can ring plain bob royal, you can ring plain bob max. But you can certainly ring a plain course of it anyway. It's very, 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 very stable. Let's look at plain bob minor from 3, 4. So a lot of people are, sorry, I've gotten really ahead of myself on my slides. So a lot of people think of the 3, 4 pair as the hardest of our 3 plain bob pairs. And it's probably because plain bob minor from the 3, 4 position is most of the time you're in that 2, 3 hunting position. But as I say, it's best to embrace that position and not be afraid of it, because it is really a very good friend for you. But plain bob minor from 3, 4 isn't actually very much harder than ringing the tenors. And in fact, getting really, really comfortable with these long extents of ringing the 2, 3 position, again, is really, really helpful. That 2, 3 pattern and that 2, 3 hunting pattern, and where you meet yourself passing, when you pass yourself in 2, 3, you pass yourself in 4, 5, these are things that appear in all kinds of methods. as well. And again, over sort of long stretches, this is also a very stable hunt-in pattern. So this is really worth taking some time to learn. And really, you should learn all the pairs. You might like one pair better than another, but you should, you know, when you're practicing with your little group, or you're practicing in ringing room, you're practicing on A-bow, you should try all the pairs. So let's have a look at what plain bob minor from the 3/4 looks like. We start off like plain hunting, 3 and 4 in opposites with 4 ringing first. And then at the end of the first lead, the third is the very first bell to make seconds at the end of the plain hunt. And again, that forces 3 and 4 to move from the opposites position into our friend the 2-3 position, because the 4 is dodging 5-6 down. They then spend a whole lead hunting in this nice 2-3 position. So this might feel a little bit scary at first because you're starting the 2-3 position from a different place than you're used to starting it from the trebles, or that you've gotten used to ringing it from the tenors, but it's the same hunting position. So you ring one lead of the 2-3 position, and then you come and do sort of a little bit of mini opposites in the second lead. The 5th is making seconds, and 3 and 4 have to dodge, but because of the way they've come in, they're kind of dodging in opposite directions to each other. So 3/4 here is dodging down, and 3 is dodging down, and 4 is dodging up. This is called a scissors dodge, and this is another useful complex pattern, slightly complex pattern that you can learn just to make your plain bob journey a little bit easier. So in this case, we cross in 3/4, do a dodge, then we're going to do another lead in this 2-3 position, and then we're going to do, again, dodging in opposite directions in 3/4 and 5-6, but the bells have swapped around. And then we have another lead, we go in, and then the second to last lead, the 4 makes seconds, the 3, forcing the 3 to dodge, and that puts us right back into the opposites position where we started off. And then right at the end, again, you dodge 3/4 with yourself, like I discussed earlier. So most of the 3/4 position, most of the 3/4 course in plain bob minor is this 2-3 position, except for the first and the last leads. Now, these two dodges here in the middle, where you're dodging in opposite directions, so you're not doing a parallel dodge. This is actually where a lot of people come unglued when they're practicing this pair. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. So this is really, we've broken this down. So in these two diagrams, so this is your first scissors dodge, and this is your second scissors dodge. And we call them a scissors dodge because you come apart and come together like a pair of scissors. And this diagram has it right across the lead, so you can see what you do after your dodge as well. So you see the first time you come together in your scissors dodge, just before the dodge happens, you're coming together with your bells with the 4th first, 4-3, so like in backgrounds. You cross, so now the 3rd's first, and you're in 4-5, you're in 4th and 5th place, and then you have to hunt apart here to 3rds and 6th. And then the actual dodge at the lead end happens here. You come back together in 4 and 5. Then you hunt apart again to 3rds and 6th, and at that point you keep hunting away. So you come together, cross, hunt apart, come together again, hunt apart, and then hunt away. So in this scissors dodge, you cross before you make the dodge, and then you nearly cross, but don't do it, and hunt away. Your second scissors dodge works the other way around. So the bells here come together nearly in rounds, and they want to cross. The temptation at this point is to cross, because that's what you would do if you were playing hunting. You come together in 4-5 and you cross, but you can't because here's the treble leading. So you're gonna dodge apart to 3rds and 6th place. Then you're gonna come together again. Now, finally, we're allowed to cross as we carry on in our hunting pattern. So your first scissors dodge, you cross first, hunt away, back up, hunt away again. And your second scissors dodge, you come together, don't cross, back up once, then you cross. It's really worth going over these in your head so that you're familiar. So common mistakes are that you get to this second scissors dodge and you cross, and then you miss the dodge and you get a little bit confused. Or you come together here and you keep playing hunting away and again, miss the dodge. So it's worthwhile knowing in advance that these scissors dodges are coming to get you, basically. But again, this shape, this scissor dodge and shape, again, is really, really common in all, you find that shape in all kinds of other methods too. So being really comfortable with doing that scissors dodge, once you get the hang of it, again, it's a nice, comfortable, easy motion, sort of playing hide and seek with yourself a bit before you then go away and play elsewhere. So that's always a really good, thing to practice. Again, there's a circle of work for the 3-4 pair, and I'll emphasize that this is not the most useful way to approach your course. But again, here, if we start here, the 3-4 course, the third makes seconds, the fourth dodges to put you into the 2-3 position. You then do your scissors dodge in one direction, your scissors dodge in the other direction, then the fourth makes seconds, while the 3 dodges 5-6. And then in the last dodge, you dodge 3-4 with yourself. So, you know, if you're worried about trying to figure out where the treble is, trying to figure out where the lead end is, and you're worried about it, you can look to this circle of work and see whether that gives you any help or not. Also, what you can do when you're all ringing together, if you are struggling, the person ringing the treble can just say the treble's leading now, and this is the dodge, just until everybody sort of gets used to it. There's nothing wrong with offering a little bit of help there. Now, the 3-4 course doesn't extend quite as nicely. I don't have a slide of 3-4. I'm playing Bob Major because I ran out of eyesight, the 3-4 course extended to major and royal doesn't work quite as nicely as the tenors course because you don't start in opposites. Your first lead isn't in opposites anymore. But it is a feature of the 3-4 course that after the first lead and the last lead are a different pattern, but all the leads in between are always in that 2-3 course. So you get a lot of time to practice that 2-3 course and get really settled into it. And that's another reason why ringing 3-4, even if you're ringing on larger numbers of bells after the trebles and the tenors, often the 3-4 is your next easiest pair to ring. And you're still ringing a pretty complicated inside pair there, but you've got a lot of structure to work with. Okay, so we've also got some other help and hints to help you out in ring and playing courses of Bob Minor. I'm going to turn over to Simon now because you're tired of my voice.
Okay, scooch over a bit so I can get in front of the camera. Okay, so when you're practicing playing Bob Minor or anything on handbells, doing lots and lots of repetition is the key. And you get a self-reinforcing effect. So the more you repeat, the more you practice your course of playing Bob Minor, you start to notice certain landmarks. And this slide shows some of my favorite landmarks with the changes highlighted in red. So this column on the left here, this is the second lead. So the second is fourth place bell. And soon after the beginning of the second lead, you get this nice 3-2-1-4-5-6. There's a nice, easily recognizable change, something good to aim for. The tenors ringing adjacently at the back, quite distinctive. Ring the rest of that lead. This is the third lead of the playing course. This is where, sorry? Nothing. This is where the 5 and 6 are second and third place bell. This is the split lead for the tenors. And at the as the half lead comes up, where the treble is striking in 6th place before lying behind, you get this nice 2-3-4-5-6-1. And that's a very distinctive position because you see the second is leading as the treble lies behind, and both of the other pairs are crossing with themselves. 3-4 are crossing in 2-3, and 5-6 are crossing in 4-5 underneath the treble. And again, in plain Bob, on any number of bells, you get something similar to this. In plain Bob major, you get 2-3-4-5-6-7-8-1, followed by 2-4-3-6-5-8-7-1. That's a nice landmark. And the other one I've highlighted here, this is the last lead of the playing course. And and you almost get reverse rounds, but not quite. 6, 5, 4, 3, 1, 2. So this is reverse rounds for all the bells except the trebles, who are the opposite way round, because in the last lead of the playing course, the trebles are coursing, but they're coursing the opposite way to the way they do in the first lead. And I realise now I should have put this 2, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 in red as well, because that's the final landmark. When you're nearly at the end, you got 2, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everyone knows they've just got to dodge with themselves to finish, and that's where you can almost breathe your sigh of relief that you've made it. And these landmarks are very nice, because if you're ringing your course, if the ringing gets a little bit scuffly, if you know you've got a nice landmark coming up, you can all aim for it. And as your band rings together and practices, you'll all get used to where these landmarks are, and you might develop your own sort of little shorthand for announcing which one is coming up. So this one, the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, you might describe that as a hand stroke roll up. Now, of course, there could be many changes that are described as hand stroke roll ups, but if you get used to the fact that that's a particular one that your group likes, then just saying hand stroke roll up will be a nice shorthand. And also, actually, the more you ring plain bob minor and then eventually other 6-bell methods, the more you start to recognize that the lead end changes themselves. And for example, this 1, 5, 6, 3, 4, 2, that's quite distinctive as well, with all the pairs striking adjacently. So you practice your playing course, you do it lots and lots, you all practice all the pairs, so you're all confident with all the positions. And when you're feeling pretty confident at that, then of course you want to ring bobs, you want to ring touches. So that's a big step to take, but not something to be too scared about. So this diagram shows exactly what a bob is. So over here on the left, we've got the plain hunting, and this is a kind of diagram we've used in the book that I call the graphical place notation diagram. So it shows which pairs of bells are crossing in blue or staying in the same place in red at each point. So this is like the place notation, but it's just written in a diagram. And for plain hunting, you see this very, very nice regular pattern with alternately all the pairs crossing and then the extreme places staying where they are and the internal pairs crossing. And this is just the plain hunting coming back to rounds at the end. So as we know, to get to plain bob, the only variation you make is that as the treble's leading, you've got seconds place. So you can see the seconds place being made in red there, and that's what causes the dodges. At a bob, as you probably realize, the difference is that fourth place is made as the treble leads. So this is actually a bob at the second lead end, if I'm not mistaken, and it's showing what happens to the fifth and the sixth. So here's the sixth making fourths, making the bob, and the fifth runs out. But the point is, all the rest of the time you're plain hunting, and whether when you get to the lead end, whether it's a plain lead with second place being made or a bob with fourth place being made, it's just one change's worth of difference, one place being made with a dodge happening above the place, those are the bells unaffected at the back, and hunting below the place, those are the bells that run in and out. So that's what you're aiming to practice. Now, if you have an analytical type of mind like I do, and you sort of try to work out what may happen and study it logically and try to get to grips with it, you might think an interesting thing to do would be to work out all the possible ways that your pair of bells could be affected by a bob. And I did work this out for the book, and it turns out there are 10 of them, and these are the 10 diagrams. However, it is not recommended to try to learn touches of plain bob minor by memorizing these 10 possibilities and trying to master them all. What you want to do is just get used to the fact that you're plain hunting away, you have one variation at the lead end, it's just that the variation is fourth place instead of seconds place as it is in the plain course. And get used to the idea that you may have one bell dodging unaffected and one bell hunting running in or out, or one bell making fourths and one bell dodging, which is rather similar to making seconds and dodging at a plain lead. Or you may have one bell making fourths at the bob and one bell running in or out, and that's just like a little bit of 4-bell plain hunting. And then you think, okay, we're going to try a touch. Which touch shall we try to ring? And the very simplest touch you can possibly ring in plain bob minor to get to grips with the bobs is call a bob at every lead. Every time you get to the lead end, you call a bob. And if you do this, you find that you just get 3 bobs at consecutive leads, and then it comes round. A very short touch of 36 changes. And this table shows what each pair does at each bob. And one thing you'll realize very quickly, if you look at this on paper or try to ring it, is that the second is going to run in at the first bob, and then it's going to run in at the second bob, and then it's going to run in at the third bob as well, and then it comes round. So the effect is that the treble and the second are both plain hunting all the way through this short touch. So you can get someone to ring the trebles for this short touch, and all they have to do is plain hunt in the coursing position for 3 leads. So you can even start ringing a touch if you've got one of your ringers who's not even very confident with the plain course, and it's actually easier for the trebles to ring this simple touch than it is to ring the plain course. So that's something to try. And this diagram shows it. The red line is the treble, the blue line is the second as always, and of course they do exactly the same thing at each bob, as I've just explained, the second running in every time. But the positions of the other bells, of course, are different because 4, 5, and 6 are cycling around each other in this touch. So in this touch, the trebles are plain hunting in the coursing position, but getting used to the fact that the tune is different, they're seeing the other bells in a different order. So that's a step forwards. Oh, and these are actually in the wrong order. Okay. Now let's have a look at the tenors. The tenors get affected by the bobs in this short touch. Okay, these diagrams actually are in the correct order, so that's fine. The bob at the first lead, you've got the 5th making the bob, and the 6th doing 5, 6 up. So the 6th is unaffected, but because the 5th is affected by the bob, their relative position changes. And what you see here at the lead end, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 4. So the tenors are in 4th and 5th place, which you'll recognize as part of the 2, 3 position. And if you've practiced your plain hunting positions thoroughly, you just think about this one step of the bob itself at the lead end. The 5th makes 4ths, the 6th does 5, 6 up, and then you instantly recognize which hunting position you're now in, and off you go plain hunting in that position, and then you're okay for the next lead. And then there's going to be another bob at the next lead end, and the 6th is going to make the bob, and the 5th does 5, 6 down. And so you think at the lead end, right, your 4ths and 5ths at hand stroke, 4ths and 6ths at backstroke, and then hooray, you're back in the coursing position. 4th and 6th place bell back in the coursing position, and off you go hunting in the coursing position. And what you'll find is that actually puts you into the final lead of the plain course pattern, and the 3rd bob of the touch you'll be dodging together at the back with yourself, both bells unaffected, and it comes round. And this diagram continues beyond rounds just to sort of follow the general pattern of showing what happens before and after the bob, but this is actually the end of the touch rounds there. And for completeness, here's what happens to 3, 4 in this simple touch. And you'll realize that just as the second always runs in, if you call 3 bobs consecutively, the 3rd always runs out. So ringing 3, 4 to this touch is a little bit like ringing trebles in a way, because you've got your right hand plain hunting all the time and the other bell doing something different. Except, of course, when the 4th dodges, it's not when the 3rd leads. But what you'll see here is this is the bob at the first lead running out, 5, 6 down, and that actually keeps you in the what? Oh, yes, right. Sorry, you were in the opposites. You were in the opposites position at the beginning, and you go into the 2, 3 position. Just in a slightly different way than you would have done it at a plain lead. And then you ring your plain hunting in the 2, 3 position, And then when you get to the second bob, the 3 is running out again, and the 4th is doing 5, 6 up. So this is a little maneuver of one bell hunting and the other bell dodging. And then you find yourself in 3rd and 5th place at backstroke at the lead end, and that is part of the coursing pattern. So now you get a lead of coursing. That's nice. You can relax a little bit because it's the easiest position. And then when you get to the next lead end, it's the 4th that's going to make the bob to bring it round. 3rd is running out as always, and you just come together in 3, 4, and that's rounds. So that's the easiest touch to get started with. And just as with the playing course, with your band, you can all try this touch on all the different pairs. So you get used to what happens on each pair. And when you're thoroughly confident with that, then you can move on to onto a different touch. And in the book, we describe a range of simple touches and analyze them in the same way that we've done here, sometimes with diagrams as a suggested way to practice. Okay, back to Tina for the final summary.
Yes, sorry, this is a little bit, this is the last slide, I promise. So at the end, this was my alternate title from the title we went on, so How to Be a Lazy Surfing Ringer. And this comes in from 2 stories. So one, a friend of ours always says that the key to good handbell ringing is to be really lazy. And he always says, actually, you should only ring the hand strokes and not worry about the backstrokes and let the backstrokes ring themselves. I'm not quite entirely on board with that full philosophy. However, he is correct in one regard, in that if you're ferociously counting and calculating your place notation at every row and ferociously counting 2 lines worth of positions and keeping an awareness of where everybody else is and tracking the treble every single blow, you're going to exhaust yourself and you're never going to get past a playing course. So what you need to do is sort of build up these sort of patterns into habits, so that when you hit your coursing pattern, when you hit an opposites pattern, when you hit some 2-3 pattern, when you get these nice long sections of plain hunting, which you're already really familiar with, you need to just relax and not think about everything. So the key to ringing handbells for a long time is to be lazy as often as possible, so that you save your mental energy and your concentration for those little points when you have to. So when you first start ringing first start ringing your course, obviously where you want to concentrate is that middle lead in the tenors course where you have that 2-3 position. So the other leads, you just want to relax and course. So you want to work on being nice and comfortable about that. The surfing analogy is from another friend of ours, and he was talking about pretty advanced ringing, but it applies to here. And he talked about not really thinking about what place he was in, but kind of surfing the overall rhythm of the change. And I like this metaphor because you have to be quite relaxed in order to keep your balance if you're surfing a wave, but you also have to kind of pay attention to what's going on around you. But it does force you to be very, very immediate. You can't afford to think too far ahead, or you're gonna spill. If you worry about something that you've missed earlier on, again, you're gonna miss a good wave. So you want to sort of be right in. So this is my advice for what you need to aim for. This is easier said than done, I assure you. So the first few times that you ring probably do feel really tense, but there are no prizes for concentrating super hard all the time and showing off about all the concentration that you're doing. So my first advice is to remember to breathe. You'd be amazed at how many people don't do that. And the second advice is to stay in the change you're in. So this has 2 meanings. One is to not get carried away and ring too fast or ring too slow, so that your whole group is still actually in the same stroke. But also mentally, you want to just ring the change that you're ringing and not really plan too far behind, not really think about what's happened, and not plan too far ahead. You just work through the change as you work through it. So you want to be in the present. If you make a mistake, just put it away. So this takes a lot of practice, actually, because usually when we make a mistake, we're like going, ah! So the thing about in order to have resilience in handbell ringing, and I'm sure a lot of you are learning this really well, Ringing Room seems to be really good at teaching this. So this is a really good tool to take advantage of right now, is to learn to keep going, even though things are looking really hairy. Because one of the best things about handbell ringing is you can plow ahead for quite a long way with lots of people lost if everybody's really stubborn about it. And you might surprise yourself at how far you get. And so it's messy. But the next time it's going to be less messy because you know you can get all the way through to the end. And you just keep improving each time you go. So, but the thing is, you have to learn how to compartmentalize and not beat yourself up for making a mistake, because everybody's going to make them. So you have to leave your mistakes. If you make a mistake, it's too late. You have to stay in the present, leave your mistake behind. And the other thing is try not to worry about what's coming up. You know you're plain hunting along, you know the treble's going to lead at some point and you're going to have to do something different, and you have to remember to break up your pattern. You're going to go wrong if you panic about that 6 changes too early. Just deal with it when it comes up. With practice, you'll start to see it a little bit better. But as I say, you know, everybody can help each other out saying when the treble's going to lead. But if you start panicking about it, you'll mess up your ringing. So you just want to stay, you know it's coming up, deal with it when it happens. And that's our presentation. I'm going to stop my screen share now.
Good.
Thanks. So hopefully that was not too many numbers. But bell ringing is inevitably a lot of numbers. So
excellent. Thank you
Everyone's
very much.
That's great.
That was excellent. Thank you. Again, the chat box has been very, very quiet. So you know, I think people have been really engrossed in that. I had a quick question, and then I can see one has come in. You touched on this a little bit, but what are your thoughts around using something like Ringing Room to begin to practice handbell ringing? You know, in the build up to actually ringing handbells?
We're completely in favor. In fact, actually, we find Ringing Room a bit easier to concentrate if you've got 2 bells to work with, because you know you're setting your rhythm with 2 bells, and because you don't have a physical bell to help you with that rhythm, you know it's actually slightly easier, I think. If you embrace that, it's slightly easier. But Ringing Room gives you a chance to ring with people and practice that kind of resilience and get some feedback on what you're doing. I'd also really recommend, you know, downloading a bell or bell tower, any one of those things that you can practice where you have sort of the perfect band around you. That can be take some practice to get used to, because it just keeps going relentlessly, even when you're just like, oh my God, what's going on? So it does take a little bit of practice, and it's not quite the same as ringing with real people, but it will definitely accelerate your learning. And especially where maybe you're in a position where you have limited opportunities to ring with other people, or you know you don't want to embarrass yourself completely in front of other people, which everybody feels. So that's perfectly normal. I think that they have a role to play even when we're able to come back bell ringing with real bells, because it is a chance for people who are maybe you know, unable to get to the tower, either through reasons of shielding, or if, you know, just any ordinary sort of disability that's maybe preventing them from coming up to the tower temporarily. They can still ring with people. You can still practice methods. Do you know, it's great. We're meeting up with people internationally, which we'd never be able to do. So.
And it's, you know, interesting, isn't it? Events like this, you know, be unlikely to get yourselves to come and talk to us about this, the distance. So, you know, using modern technology helps with that. We've had a couple of things in the chat box. Steph has said, staying in the present is good advice on tower bells too, even more important in hand. So, like, kudos to that comment there. Jane, you put a question in the chat box. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask that in person?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about handbell ringing other than what I've seen on these presentations. I wondered if there was ever an occasion where instead of ringing bells 1 and 2, you'd be ringing 1 and 3, you know, not next to each other.
I'll let you have that one.
It's quite unusual. So one situation where it does come up is that when you want to practice the 2-3 position in plain hunting on 6, you have to think about how to do it, because none of the natural handbell pairs are ringing that position, right? Because 1, 2, and 5, 6 are both coursing, and 3, 4 are in the opposite position. So no one has the 2, 3 position. So people fall into 2 groups. So some people like to practice the 2, 3 position by giving someone 2 and 3, someone 4 and 5, and someone 6 and 1. And then you've got someone ringing a pair that isn't adjacent in the ordinary sense, the treble and the tenor. Now, I find that very, very difficult. What I like to do to practice the 2-3 position is have the person who wants to practice that position ringing 1-2, and then we ring the second lead of plain bob minor, and we just don't start in rounds. We start in 1-3-5, 2-6-4. And then you're practicing the 2-3 position exactly as it occurs in plain bob minor, which is what you're really aiming for. So that's what I like to do. Occasionally, people ring peals with non-standard pairs. So I think in the past, I seem to remember there was a peal once where the ringers just drew randomly for bells at the beginning, like people sometimes do on tower bells. And then sometimes someone might end up with 1-5 and someone's got 3-8 and that kind of thing. But that's a sort of a bit of a novelty stunt. It's not a very usual thing to do.
Oh, but try it once, yeah. It's quite a brain teaser. Yeah. It's surprisingly hard.
It looks difficult enough with just ringing bells 1 and 2. So,
it's easier.
Yeah, I'll give it a go.
Thanks, Jane. Andy's asked a question, or Andy or Ellie has asked a question. Do you have any advice for transitioning from plain minor to surprise minor? That's
well, I think you work up to it by ringing things that become sort of more and more like surprise. So you can ring after plain bob minor, you can ring a range of other plain methods. So reverse bob, double bob, little bob, St. Clement's is good. They all build up practice in ringing your bells in different relationships and changing the relationship of your bells more often. And then you go on to treble bob, so Kent and Oxford, and get used to treble bob hunting and the kind of patterns you get there. And then you can go on to so Norwich surprise minor is quite a good first surprise minor method to try. It's quite well known in the tower. It has quite a simple structure as well. Alternatively, Cambridge minor, if you know it thoroughly in the tower, if you've become competent on plain and treble bob minor, if you know Cambridge minor thoroughly in the tower, and if you can find 2 other people to ring with who are competent at Cambridge minor on handbells, then it's usually not too difficult to get into Cambridge minor. If you've got 3 of you all learning together, of course, it's much harder and takes longer. Mm-hmm. Volume 2 of the book will say more about this.
Yeah, I personally, if you're pretty familiar with Cambridge minor, ringing it in the tower, as I say, you can always go for brute force attack at the method and just get 3 people together and keep trying to ring it until you get to the end of a course, because it's a small enough method you can kind of grind your way through it until you get used to it. I personally like Cambridge because the effect in hand is that at Cambridge minor in particular, the front work and the 3-4 places start at the lead end and end at the half lead when the treble's at the back, and then like the second set of those places, and then the back work bridges over the back work's the back work. But it means that you have big, long, parallel chunks of work, and then at the half lead, you just move to the next big parallel chunk of work. So it's it's quite static. And really, really stable, but it's not so static you just get yourself twisted around. I mean, there's enough going on to keep your attention, but it's relatively static, so you're not moving your bells too far away for whole stretches at a time. So it is quite nice. If you're very comfortable ringing Cambridge minor and tower, you could just give it a go. At some point, I'd recommend going back and doing the Kent apprenticeship and getting your treble bob skills honed up, because if you ever want to go into ringing on 10 or 12, you really, really need those core skills back again. So all of your plain hunting patterns, especially your Corson pattern, and learning how to treble bob different paired bells in different positions really well, is really, it suddenly comes right back into their own when you're ringing on 12. I don't do a lot of handbell ringing on 12, but I can see from the methods that, you know, you start with these really basic patterns, and then you sort of rumble through surprise minor and surprise major, and they feel less useful. And then as soon as you get on into sort of ringing on 10 or 12, suddenly they're very useful again. So it's always good to have those basics. But, you know, if you want to have fun and give Cambridge a go for it.
So someone suggested double Oxford. So yeah, that's another good method
double
that
Oxford's
has
good.
Many characteristics of surprise methods.
Yeah.
Another tip for practicing that we haven't mentioned yet is practice one lead at a time. You don't have to start in rounds. In the tower, starting in a change other than rounds is just very difficult and takes so long to get everyone doing it that you might just as well start from the beginning of the playing course. But in handbells, starting in a change other than rounds is relatively easy. You just decide the change, ring a hand stroke and a backstroke in that change, and then go into it. And if you're getting, you know, if you're getting stuck on one particular lead of Cambridge, say, then just practice that lead repeatedly by starting at the beginning of that lead, and that really helps.
Super, thank you. We had a comment asking if we could hear a little bit more about your book. I was going to say that you know you're far too polite, both of you, to plug your book, but I would highly recommend it. Somebody like me who isn't very good at handbells or very inexperienced at handbells, it's very clear and really good read. But could you talk a little about your book, perhaps, or one of the books?
So the book, here it is. It comes in two versions. So there's a paperback version, which is this one. There's also a Kindle edition. It's 200 pages long. It starts right from the beginning. It doesn't even assume that you are any kind of a ringer. So someone, I think Simon Linford said this the other week, someone who's never even seen any kind of bell before would, we hope, be able to learn change ringing on handbells from the book. It starts from plain hunting on 4. And works up. The final chapter is about double Norwich major, and along the way we cover a range of plain, minor and major methods, and also Kent and Oxford minor and major. There are also a range of compositions for short touches and quarter peals, detailed instructions on how to ring your first quarter peal of plain bob minor, and then plain bob major. There are lots of diagrams of methods, fragments of methods like the ones we showed you in the talk. If you get the Kindle edition, then all the method diagrams and all the compositions are linked, so you can click on them or press on them on your tablet, and they link through to Graham John's composition library, and you'll find yourself looking at, for example, a method diagram. And then if you want to, within composition library, you can look at the method in different ways, see which pair you want the lines for. Similarly, the compositions all link through to composition library, and then you can format them in different ways, laid out in a tabular form or laid out according to leads or whatever you want. Did I miss anything?
No. I mean, we started writing the book an embarrassing long time ago, but really because there hadn't been any updated books on ringing in handbells. I know Simon Linford in his last talk mentioned the 2 Central Council publications, which are now available as a free download. Absolutely recommend that you download them, because they're free and they're useful, and they have the nub of this, but they do assume that you know quite a lot about bell ringing already, and they were written a long time ago. So it's probably more dense than the kind of things we're used to absorbing now. I learned to ring handbells before I ever touched a tower bell rope, or even saw a tower bell. And so part of the impetus for making this start from ground zero is to share that experience with other people. I thought it was a great way to learn to ring. And I learned without ever knowing anything about change ringing or anything at all. I just went to a lecture had some interesting stuff, and somebody sat me down with a diagram and a set of handbells and said, "Great, come back next week." And that was me. So yeah, and so we kind of wanted to replicate that.
Super, thank you. As I say, yeah, buy a copy. Where do you buy a copy from?
Amazon.
there you are.
It depends on Amazon, yeah, either the paperback version or the Kindle. The paperback costs £20. Some people think that's a little bit pricey, which is mainly due to the production costs and the overhead of publishing with Amazon. The Kindle edition is £8.99, which is much cheaper, and in some ways better because you get the click-throughs to the composition library. But of course, it depends on whether you like ebooks or whether you prefer something you can really hold in your hand.
The Guild Library has one to lend out if you want to borrow a book first to have a look at.
And volume 2 is about half written at the moment. Volume 2 will pick up where volume 1 left off, and it will exactly get you into Ringing Surprise and go all the way up through Surprise Major, Surprise Royal, even dip a toe into Surprise Maximus. And we're hoping to also cover odd bell ringing, including Granzer and Stedman, although we are not such experts on Stedman. So writing that chapter remains a particular challenge.
We might be seeking some advice.
I'm conscious about time, and I know you both said you still got your dinner to have, so we'll wrap up now. Just to plug a couple of things, Janet has put in the chat box about the Birmingham School of Bell Ringing and Handbell group on Facebook. So if you do want any more, if you want to find out more about handbell ringing and are interested, sign up to that, and Janet will coordinate that. Janet, do you want to say anything about it?
Unmute myself. Yeah, I've put about it on the school Facebook page. So what we really want to try and do, I think, is try and see if we can have a go at going on the learning the ropes handbell route. So I mean, I reckon I'm probably in level 2. So just because I've been ringing for a long time doesn't mean on tower bells doesn't mean that I'm an expert on handbells. And we've got a couple of other people signed up who are like level 1 and level 2. And the idea is that perhaps we can just get together with the real handbells and just have a go at getting started. About what Tina was saying about starting with Plain Hunt on 4. I mean, that's what Rose and I did at the beginning of lockdown. We started with Plain Hunt on 4 and Plain Bob Minimus and Reverse Bob Minimus. And now we had a go with Claire last weekend, having a go at some Bob Minor. So yeah, if anybody's interested in that, we can see what level of interest we've got, who wants to sign up, and we can get the books from Art, and we can start having a go at it. Obviously, the school handbells are not the only handbells out there. I know Brumdingers have been having goes on real handbells as well. So
thank you,
just see where we get to, really.
Alistair Cherry, just thank you for that, Janet. Alistair Cherry has also, just to remind everyone, we talked about this with Simon's talk, has also offered to run any sessions on Ringing Room, sort of building up sort of Bob Minor and so on before you go on to handbell. So again, let us know if you're interested, and we can get in touch with Alistair.
Yeah, I'll say the Learn to Ring Handbells scheme is quite a good way to, you know, mark your progress and log your way through. And certainly Plain Hunt on 4 is a really good, easy, gentle way to just get started, and has a pretty low entry. You just need one other person to ring with. So yeah, it feels like, you know, 24 changes doesn't feel like hardly anything, but you know, it's a really good accomplishment to get that done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of 4-bell ringing that's been going on during lockdown is absolutely staggering.
Yes,
yeah, it is. Thank you both. Just a couple of notices, and then we'll wrap up. On Saturday we have David Smith, who is going to finish off the session from last Saturday, I think, and finish off the questions that he sort of developed from Saturday just gone. Next Wednesday we have John Warboys, who's going to lead a session on an introduction to composition. So that will be an interesting talk.
Well, we'll tune in for that.
Yeah.
Welcome. And don't forget, you've got less than a week to enter our photo competition. We have one of our esteemed judges in this room, Jill Postle. But please, you know, Get out, walk in, take your photos, and email them to the smgcbr@gmail.com email address. Tina and Simon, you've got lots of thanks coming in the chat box.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah,
Really enjoyed it.
it was fun. Thank you very much.
You okay, Susan?
Oh yeah. Have you forgot to stop recording or not?
That's a good point, Susan, and I'll do that now.
Yeah, I was noticing it was still recording, and I was going to say, may stop recording. But
I've just stopped.
still.